that it's hard to appreciate when a truly big story actually comes along. But Detroit's decision to file for bankruptcy protection is, I think, one of the most important stories in America right now. Detroit's debt is $18 billion. That's more than 4 times the next largest bankruptcy. If you just parceled out that debt out to the entire population of Detroit, it would be $100,000 of debt for every family of 4. And while it suffered for years under mismanagement and corruption under many Democratic officials, today Detroit is fast becoming the most libertarian city in the United States. In many areas, there are basically no public services besides decaying roads and bombed-out infrastructure. 40% of the streetlights don't work at night, and that leaves a troubled city stuck in the dark. Even police and emergency services have literally become optional. Think about it like this. Across the country, a call to police brings a response in about 11 minutes. In Detroit now, the average is 58 minutes, and many times it takes much longer if the police come at all. Now, if you know all that, you know that cutting current public services, what's left of them, won't cover Detroit's debts. New taxes won't do it either. The bankruptcy law will enable Detroit to renegotiate with creditors, kind of like a corporation or citizen can under Chapter 11, although some of the rules are different under the municipal structure of Chapter 9. So what can Detroit do for its workers and the city's debt to these pension holders? Well, I think it's time to look to Washington. Yes, just like Republicans did in the 80s for Chrysler and Continental, or like Democrats did in the 90s for the investment firm Long-Term Capital Management, or like Republicans and Democrats did in the 2008 financial crisis for Bear Stearns and Wells Fargo and Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase and Citigroup and Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and Bank of New York Mellon and, yeah, over 700 other banks. As Wall Street financier and auto industry expert Stephen Ratner wrote in the New York Times, the residents of Motor City are no more responsible for Detroit's problems than were the victims of Hurricane Sandy for theirs. Congress right now should convene a special session to address Detroit's emergency. It can send emergency aid right now as the city prepares to operate without a solvent government. It can target jobs programs in the city. Jobs are supposedly, we're told, a priority of both parties. And it can explore some less expensive and, I would note, less liberal solutions like simply investing in local property, which could be sold later, or starting a Detroit branch of the Smithsonian. That's actually a pretty logical way to avert a cultural disaster, because there's talk that bankruptcy could force the city to auction off $1 billion worth of art collected over 128 years at the Detroit Institute of Art. The federal government could partner up with the Institute, buy that cultural heritage, and keep it accessible for people in Detroit and around the country. There's a lot of ideas. My point is, our fellow citizens are hurting. There are a lot of things Congress can do. But if the largest local bankruptcy in our history isn't the right time for spending on emergency aid and jobs, when is the right time?